So what is the current status of data citation? Well, I'd describe the current status as very early days, but tracking well. For those that are new to the idea of data citation, it really just refers to the practice of providing a reference to data in the same way as a researcher would routinely provide a bibliographic reference, such as journal articles, in their own papers and reports. The practice of citing data has really come about to support two key goals, and they're not dissimilar from the same reasons that you would cite any other sort of scholarly output. One goal is to provide attribution or credit to the creator of the data in the same way that you would for the author of a journal article. And the other reason for citing data is to facilitate access to that data. So the research data that underpins a research paper and thereby supports the transparency and reproducibility of research. So there's those two different components, the attribution and acknowledgement, and the facilitating of access to the data. What we're seeing increasingly is that journal publishers are requiring authors, as part of the manuscript submission process, to make the data underpinning an article available. And in doing so then, that data is made available for reuse, and when it's reused, for citation. So citation is a really important aspect of, I guess, the scholarly output life cycle. There has been a fair bit of activity, both internationally and locally, around developing standards for citing data. As I mentioned at the outset, this is still very early days. And the practice of citing data isn't as well as established as it is for citing other types of scholarly outputs. But there have been bodies such as DataCite and the Research Data Alliance that have been active in this area of trying to formulate standards around the citation of data. And tools are now becoming available to track the reuse of data and capture citation metrics for data reuse in the same way as we do for publications. However, it's probably fair to say that as of now, the citation of data is not yet formally recognised as a performance measure in most Australian research organisations in the same way as other publication metrics may be. So I guess part of what we're trying to encourage is for people to start thinking ahead and imagine a time when this will be part of their performance measure, as citation metrics are for their papers, and start ensuring that they're citing the data that they reuse now and be ahead of the curve. Because it is fair to say that it's not yet standard scholarly practice for authors to formally cite data in their reference lists. Most commonly what we're seeing is that data that underpins a research article is described in a methods section or an acknowledgement section of a paper, rather than in the reference list of a paper. So this is a cultural change process that is really just starting in the scholarly community, and it's going to take some time to grab hold. But until that practice takes off, then the ability to track reuse of data and capture those metrics is going to be quite challenging, because without a formal citation, it's really difficult to track that reuse. It's also fair to say that it's not yet standard practices for publishers to provide advice in their instructions for authors as to how they should cite data in their reference lists. So sometimes what you see is it's cited as perhaps a website or some other format that doesn't really accurately represent what that scholarly output is as a research data collection or data set. So there is activity in the publisher community to start, I guess, trying to pull together some standard practices around the citation of data in published journals. Another area that is still emerging, really, is the assignment of DOIs, or digital object identifiers, to published data. Now, this again has been standard practice for journal publishers for a long time, where essentially every article you read online has that digital object identifier attached to it to persistently provide access to that paper and to facilitate the citation of papers. But that practice is still gaining traction in the research data community. And this is an area where Australia has been particularly active in both uptake of assignment of DOIs to data, and also trying to encourage that practice of using the DOIs in data citations. And the Australian National Data Service here in Australia does offer a DOI minting service for data. But I think really the biggest challenge is that cultural change process, whereby people writing their papers actually include a formal citation to the data in their reference list, because that hasn't been common practice. And I guess that's an area that we try and promote, is that if you are reusing data, think of it as another scholarly output that you're citing, and formally recognise it in your citation or in your reference lists. Don't tuck it away in an acknowledgement or a method section. So that's quite a big cultural change process. So the way we've been approaching that is to actually encourage people who are publishing their data to cite their own data in their reference lists, to kick that process off. So you publish your data, hopefully you may have a DOI assigned to the data. An undertaking an analysis of that data in a journal paper or a book chapter or whatever that you're writing. So cite your own data in your own reference list, and let's get that cultural change process moving from that basis. Because they're the people, having published their data, I guess, that have an interest in seeing it reused and formally cited. Again, what we're trying to, I guess, encourage here is the reuse of data and some recognition for the effort of publishing data and making it available.